Hello everybody and welcome to AER Memories of Old. This game came out of nowhere and was one of those games that once I played it, I just couldn't put it down. Before we jump into the game though, let's take a look at the settings menu. So there's not really a whole lot to say here. You've got your gameplay tag, which lets you change your language, invert camera settings, your different sensitivities while flying and walking, a setting that allows you to tilt the camera in the air, which you definitely want on, and then your compass, which you also want on. Over here in the video, we have a resolution, full screen, VSync, which you may want on if you don't want some stuttering, which I did deal with a few times. You got anti-aliasing, SSAO, and shadow distance, and all of these are good to have, but I think a graphics quality option, or at least a render distance, would be nice, as this game, though not being graphically intensive, does have some stuttering issues when there's a lot on the screen. Other than those two settings, I wouldn't say you need to add anything else, and I know I always recommend an FOV slider, but once you see this game, you'll understand why I'm not crying about that. Moving on to the audio options, we've got master volume, music, and effects. Yeah, not a lot going on here, and typically I'd say that's not enough, but honestly for this game, that's really all you need. Let's go ahead and jump into it. Upon looking at this game, you may think of other games like Rime, Abzu, Journey, and you wouldn't be faulted for thinking that. This is a non-violent exploring game that takes place in the skies. Your character, a silent female protagonist, has the ability to turn into a bird, allowing her to fly from one of these cloud towns to another. After your introduction to the game, you're given a magic lamp that helps you solve puzzles, as well as learn about who lived in the land before you. I really like how this story is told. You never have to talk to the NPCs to find your missions like you do in a Zelda game. I actually started flying around the map, discovering all the cities and towns that I could travel to, learning about the world, and as you go on, you can collect these scrolls that shed light on the culture that came before. It really gives you an amazingly descriptive idea about how the culture was compared to what you see now, which really got me invested in the game. The only problem with that was there's no reward for collecting these, no alternate ending or cool power-ups, so if you weren't much of an explorer, then I wouldn't fault you for skipping them over, which is a real bummer as these scrolls helped immerse me into the game. They made me care, they made me want to fight for this place, and I really think that there should be a bigger incentive to learn about the world that the developers designed. Now of course you could say, well Barry, if I'm buying this exploration game, then wouldn't it make sense that I'm probably someone who would care? And that's a fair point. But it's far too easy while playing these types of games to just skip through the chit chat, and I honestly wouldn't blame you if you played the game that way. I just think an incentive for these kinds of things would be a good idea, as it really did do a lot to pull me in, especially since I'm one of those skippy people that I mentioned a second ago. Now what do I mean by wanting to save this place? See, this game gave me a lot of Zelda vibes. A great evil trying to destroy the world, temples with puzzles that you have to solve, a silent protagonist with a goal to become the hero, you get the picture. The setting feels very Legend of Zelda, and the only problem with that are there are no attacks, which leaves a lot to be desired. I've come to really enjoy these non-violent adventure games, but every time I play one, I always think what could have been if only there were enemies scattered throughout the land. Things for me to destroy. Sure, I got absorbed into the world, but it would have just been nice fighting off enemies in the air who would have been trying to stop me from getting to the next temple, or enemies in the cities endangering the civilians who live there. But the game did do a lot right that I can't say for many Zelda games anymore. This game made me want to be the hero. It made me want to save it. The only unfortunate thing is it made me want to save it only because I found those hidden scrolls and read about the culture and heritage. Without all that, I don't know if I would have cared, but at least it let me decide. I wasn't just thrown into a world like I am in Zelda, where someone I don't know tells me that I'm the only person who can save them. No, nobody told me I had to do anything. I didn't even have to talk to anyone. It was only as I learned and became immersed that I realized I wanted to be the hero. The culture actually started to mean something to me, and that was a cool feeling. Let's talk about the temples. There are 3 temples that you have to complete, and upon completing them, you collect keys to the next temple, as well as pieces of a giant coin that grants you access to the end game. Inside each temples are puzzles? I mean, I guess I have to call them that, but they're not really challenging. I never bent my mind around trying to figure them out. It was more like, oh, well, I pressed A in all the right locations in this part of the temple, now I'll just walk over to the other side where I haven't been and do the same. It's just a bit giving to call them puzzles is all, and the only times I actually felt confused was only because I missed one of these little glowing platforms and not because the game had actually tricked me. This does kind of annoy me as I feel this game could have left a deeper impression had I felt that, oh, I get it moment as I solved them, but instead it was more like, alright. Whilst in the temples, you also can't be a bird anymore, which was weird to me as it either didn't explain why or I didn't pay attention. To me, it just felt like, oh well, this would obviously be cheating if I could be a bird in here, so let's just take that out, I guess. And since I had no idea why I couldn't use that ability, it just left me wondering why every time I entered a temple. Moving us on to the part of the game that I love the most, the flying. I simply couldn't get enough. Flying from place to place felt so smooth and natural. Flying through the clouds was really cool as well. As you passed through certain towns, you'd hear different pieces of music, which was very calming, but more importantly, gave different towns their own character. There are 11 different towns that you can discover, but unfortunately there's not a lot to do in most of them. As beautiful as this world is, it's very empty. Don't get me wrong, the crafting in this place was excellently done. I loved discovering all the areas of the map and even did it before starting the game. However, when it came to the side quests, I only found a couple and they weren't really that hard or fun. In one of them, a little girl ran away and I had to go find her. But because the little girl wasn't a shapeshifter, she was just somewhere on the same floating island. Didn't take that long to find her and honestly wasn't rewarding enough for me to go look for other side quests. I feel like the game could have done well with more things to do around the world. As I said earlier, enemies flying around too. Maybe there could be storm clouds that could hold a reward for flying into them. A power-up. But if I fly into the wrong cloud, the main villain could throw me across the map randomly. Sure, it's nice to fly around, but the campaign's only a couple hours long. If you rush through it, you could probably do it in about an hour and 20 minutes. So how's the gameplay? Honestly, it was very fun and smooth almost throughout. I tried it on keyboard and mouse and controller and both are really fun. There were some points in the game where it stuttered, especially over places with a lot going on, and turning VSync on did fix that for the most part. The camera was also a little weird at times, did some funny clipping stuff while I explored temples and when I got too close to walls. The character had some clipping issues as well. Not often, but every now and then jumping would get annoying because my character would just stick to the edge of the wall I was on. In all, I think this game is fantastic. Honestly, I just wish it had been longer. I wish there had been more side quests, more things to do. I really wish there had been attacks to unlock and enemies to fight, especially as the bird. And when I look at this game, I almost feel as though perhaps it was the developers who lacked the experience to do these things, or perhaps the budget to make it happen. Which isn't exactly a bad thing. These guys are really talented, and if I think more people support the game, it can help ensure that their next one is hopefully a lot better. I love the way they tell the story unintrusively, and I hope they have new ideas around the corner. Honestly, I wouldn't mind a sequel on a bigger scale. This game again is AER Memories of Old. It's sold on the PlayStation 4, Xbox One, and Steam for $14.99 or your regional equivalent. I sincerely hope this review was useful to you, and I'll see you next time.